Welcome to First Unitarian Toronto Online, where we gather in a new way to seek, connect, and serve. We welcome you, whether you're joining us from close by or far away, and whether you're a longtime member of this community or joining us today for the very first time. You belong here because you are here. As we begin, we acknowledge that in the city of Toronto, the land upon which we gather is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. This morning, I am joining you from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. Wherever we are today, we dwell on Indigenous land that was colonized by settlers through acts of oppression, violence, and injustice. As a congregation and as individuals, may we renew our commitments to the ongoing work of truth and reconciliation today and in the days to come. I'm Reverend Lynn Harrison. I'm joined today by pianist Adam Sakiyama, Director of Music and Congregational Engagement Dallas Bergen, resident musician Danny Fong, Justice Krar, who is providing technical support for us today, and our senior minister, Reverend Sean Newton. Now, as we begin our service, I invite you to light a chalice or a candle if you have one handy, and join with us in our chalice lighting words. As we light our chalice, may its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth.
Good morning. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. And in a culture that teaches us to get for what we give and to ask what's in it for me, we come to practice generosity and to remember that we are all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing and to give thanks, to laugh together and to be keepers of beauty, to offer a place of belonging for all who come, in gladness and in pain, to resist the push to the next moment and the next, to slow down, to breathe more deeply and feel ourselves a part of something greater. For this hour and in this space, let us be the change we wish to see. Come, let us worship together. From our many and varied paths, we come together to build up a community of commitment, hope, and love. Giving voice to our highest aspirations, let us now join our voices in the words of our covenant. Love is our doctrine. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all.
As we begin our service, I invite you all to join me in singing the Unitarian hymn, Gather the Spirit. Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in awe, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again, gather to celebrate once again.
I bring you news of the life of the congregation. Reminder of our very important congregational meeting today, voting on a proposal to purchase the property recommended by the board and real estate task force. Registration for today's meeting is open from 12 p.m. for the 12:30 meeting. You'll have the best experience if you connect via PC, Windows, or Mac. You can also connect via handheld device or even audio only with a landline telephone. To attend this meeting, you must be a voting member. As a non-voter, you may observe this meeting on our YouTube channel. Those links will be posted at the end of the service. And because of today's meeting, we'll have no breakout discussion groups following the service. The newcomer welcome room will be open briefly, hosted by me and Diane Wagner. That will be open from 11:30 onwards. When will we return to in-person activities? With the ever-changing situation, we don't see us gathering in large groups at First Unitarian earlier than November. You are encouraged to visit the website for a detailed letter from our leaders and answers to frequently asked questions. Online events coming up in the congregation. We have a multi-generational Autumn Birches online paint party that's happening on Tuesday, October 5th at 7 p.m., hosted by our Director of Religious Lifespan Education, Angela Clausen, and Julianne Momirov. Registration for that is required, so see First Light for details. Also, our journey groups, our monthly spiritual development and congregational connections groups are open now. These groups meet monthly, focused on themed discussion. You can see the website for registration also. And our drop-in groups are in full resumption with a new one as well. So we have Tuesday Awakenings with Reverend Lynn Harrison, also Thursday Evening Reflections, and a new group called Care of the Spirit, starting Tuesday, September 28th. This group is a way to explore personal spiritual practice with the support of others at First. And you can register through a link in First Light this week or by contacting Reverend Lynn. Black, Indigenous, persons of color in the congregation looking to connect with others are welcome to join a bi-weekly group for informal online get-togethers. These are hosted by Maurice Rocco, and details can be found in First Light how to join that group as well. We will be recognizing Day of National Truth and Reconciliation in our service next Sunday, the 26th of September, in observance of the federal holiday. On September 30th, you're encouraged and welcome to wear orange shirts. Please be sure to check that these are shirts created by Indigenous artists and benefiting Indigenous communities and charities. And we hope to see you in Orange next week. News from the Canadian Unitarian Council. This is starting tonight. There are COC forums on dismantling racism. This is a 4-part series beginning this evening at 7. 4 forums to bring congregations together in respectful conversation about dismantling racism. The forums will help congregations undertake their own anti-racism work, as well as support the discussions surrounding the proposed 8th principle. Participants can attend them as a series or as standalone sessions. See the COC website for more details. And also I refer you to First Light for details from all of our congregational news and activities and notices from our Green Team and our Reconciliation Working Group. Please refer to First Light and the website.
We move now into a time of meditation, and I need to just let you know there's some technical difficulties going on in the background of this morning, so please bear with us. Enter now into a time of reflection, a time that begins with the words of Unitarian minister Margaret Weiss, and then from there we will move into a time of shared silence. A congregation is not a place, it is a people. A congregation is not only a steeple above the tree-lined streets and cars, rather it is a people proclaiming to the world that we are here for the work of healing and of justice. A congregation is not walls built stone upon stone, held together by mortar, but rather person, linked with person, linked with person. All ages and genders and abilities, a community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. A congregation is not just a set of doors open on Sunday morning, but the commitment day after day and moment after moment of our hearts creaking open the doors of welcome to the possibility of new experience and radical welcome. A congregation is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. A congregation is the gathering together of all the people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts, gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache and pick up hope and love. This congregation is us, each and every one of us, together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it.
We come to a time now in our service when we offer prayerful reflection on our shared sorrows as well as our joys. In the interdependent web of life, our personal experiences may seem separate, yet they are woven together in so many ways. Opening ourselves to the meaning and mystery of life in all its seasons, we affirm that what touches any one of us affects us all. This is a significant time in the life of our congregation and also in the life of Canada as we prepare to cast votes with the hope of co-creating just and inclusive futures for our communities. Grateful for our ability to affirm the right of conscience and the democratic process in both this country and this congregation, we hold with shared sorrow all those people around the world whose voices are not able to be heard. We pray for our growing ability to nurture and sustain just and inclusive communities for all, today and in the days to come. And we hope for all leaders the ability to serve with wisdom, grace, and courage at this extraordinary time. This morning, we acknowledge with disappointment and regret the fact that our YouTube streaming, is not able to take place this morning, or at least not at the moment. We hold in our hearts all of those who are with us today in spirit, who would like to be with us more closely this morning, but who are unable. We hold in our hearts today all people who are struggling with physical or emotional pain, unresolved conflict, insecurity in employment or housing, and the ongoing impact of COVID-19. We hold with special care those in our community and beyond who are grieving the loss of loved ones today. In our congregation today, we remember Eveline Armour, a good friend of First who died peacefully at home on August 31st, age 79. Eveline is remembered as a very exuberant person who could fill a room with her enthusiasm. She was a lifelong learner with a passion for the arts. May the memory of Eveline be a blessing for all who knew her. As we open our hearts to the spirit of life that sustains us through times of sorrow, I invite you to lift any concerns you are carrying today into the chat or hold them in the sanctuary of your hearts that they may be met with love and care today. I will do my very best to lift them up. Harold Wright is remembering the life of Eileen Barclay, mother of a brother-in-law. Eileen, a lovely person, died suddenly earlier this week. We are so sorry for your loss, Harold, thinking of your family. Jill Caskey is thinking of her friend Julie, who received a devastating diagnosis and underwent emergency surgery. We are thinking of Julie today, Jill. Thank you for sharing. Diane Bosman and Paul Bogner, lifting up prayers for the beloved elder Lorna, struggling with COVID. Sue Hansel, lifting up her friend Crystal, who is suffering worsening health challenges and the loss of her beloved cat Diva. Joseph notes with sorrow a shooting in his workplace. Margaret Newell, thinking of her granddaughter at Western, living with the uncertainty of the atmosphere there right now. Rilla Clark, holding love for another dear friend, Wendy, diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Rona MacDonald, thinking today of all of those recovering from surgery and illness. Knowing that there are many other sorrows and concerns that we are holding in our hearts today, may these and other concerns be met with love, care, and compassion today and in the days to come. In addition to the many sorrows we carry, we also have joys to lift up today. Celebrations and milestones, gratitudes large and small. Today we come together in joy and anticipation just before our congregational meeting this afternoon, at which time such an important vote on our potential new home will take place. We join in deep gratitude for the many people on the real estate team and in leadership who have worked so very hard to make this vote possible. Thank you. In the wider Canadian UU world, today we send our congratulations to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Olinda in Ruthven, or Kingsville, Ontario. It is celebrating its 140th anniversary. The Olinda congregation was founded in 1880 as a Universalist church, and the congregation still meets in the sanctuary that was built in 1881. The Reverend Rod Solano Quesnel is beginning his 4th year of settled ministry there. We extend our heartfelt best wishes to everyone in the Olinda congregation. As we lift up the joys we are grateful for today, we give thanks for the renewal and co-creation of life that is always taking place within and around us. I invite you to share any joys you are carrying in the chat. CJ Martin is grateful for good care at emergency department this weekend. It is humbling to not be able to do even very basic self-care. And CJ expresses gratitude for all of those who treated her with dignity. Thank you, CJ, for sharing that with us. Wendy Peebles and Peter Bryden share the joy of a get-together with their son, daughter-in-law, and grandsons yesterday. Thank you for sharing that with us as well. Bob Sherman writes, my brother is recovering well from brain surgery earlier this week. That is indeed good news. Thank you, Bob. Terry Marks is grateful for the success of Unicamp's AGM, shorter and with a congregation of the 8th principle, thanks to Calvin Drake as the Zoom master. Thank you, Terry, for sharing that. Ruth Tate writes, watching the multitudes of goldfinches chattering at the bounty of the autumn native species provision, my garden gives to myself and to all. Thank you, Ruth. Lindsay Cornfield shares excitement that her private refugee sponsorship family is finally arriving in Toronto in a few weeks. That is indeed a great joy. Thank you, Lindsay. Amanda is feeling a sense of community when neighbors with food allergies asked if they could pick some organic apples from my fruit trees. So much joy and community expressed so many ways. Susan Richardson shares gratitude for the life of cousin Blair Fitzsimmons and for the warm, small gathering of his life held yesterday in Hamilton. Beth loves to chat with 15-year-old grandson who is enjoying his first Canadian school and exploring Toronto with his new school friends already. That is good news. Thank you, Beth. Moara is thankful for a beautiful hike in Rough Park yesterday. Donald Cole expresses gratitude for apple cider, fresh pressed yesterday from our wild and community apples. Thank you, Donald. Adele Messina, grateful and sharing the joy of the birthday of our daughter Alexis on Tuesday. Happy birthday, Alexis, and thank you, Adele. Robin writes, it was Ren's 5th birthday on Friday. She is the embodiment of joy, and I am blessed to witness to the light she pours out into the world. Happy birthday, Ren, and thank you, Robin. Wendy Ewens, grateful for the outstanding serenity and beauty of color of red sails, blue skies, and seas, and rolling green hills of PEI, where I am on vacation these past 9 days. Thank you, Wendy. We are glad to be connected with you across the miles. Rouge Park, Moara sends that small correction. Rouge Park, thank you, Moara. Hannah Cheatham is excited for my roommate's cat, Daphne, who is coming to live with us today. Oh, thank you, Hannah, and welcome, Daphne. Dace Venberga shares gratitude for our free and democratic election process in Canada, while holding hope for the democratic opposition in today's election in Russia. Raya and Bill are celebrating 8 years of marriage this week. Congratulations. Catherine Lake, grateful for a beautiful wife and son who worked with me to make amazing salsa and sauce yesterday from a gorgeous harvest of tomatoes and all the other perfect produce from Ontario farmers. So much joy at this harvest time. Sean Newton shares the gratitude that Jeanette Morgan, the wife of former Minister of First John Morgan, has, at age 99, come through 2 heart surgeries with flying colors. We extend our very best wishes as a congregation to Jeanette Morgan today. Wendy Dines is grateful to gather to celebrate our grandson's 1st birthday today, and such a beautiful sunny day to do that. Thank you, Wendy. Nick De Silva, feeling confident and grateful as I begin my studies at U of T. Thank you for sharing that with us, Nick. Sarah shares, my nearly 1-year-old is handling her first tooth coming in like a champ. She is so brave and resilient. What a milestone that is. Thank you. Lou is grateful to be able to hike with Safari, a blind and low vision group, on Thursday at Hyde Park. Thank you, Lou. And Jennifer Beer writes, it is so nice to get together with some fellow firsters yesterday, some of whom I hadn't seen in a year. I too was grateful to join a gathering with Sean, also of UU Ministers of Southern Ontario, at an outdoor gathering on Friday. That was also a joy I'd like to share. Dace is also grateful that her son Remus is beginning his post-secondary journey in engineering technology. May those studies go well. Thank you for sharing that. Knowing that we hold additional joys as well as sorrows in our hearts, we hold all of these together as a community in light and love. Now I invite you all, if you wish, to join me in a moment of prayer or reflection. Spirit of life, the divine known to us by many names, and yet beyond all naming, bring us wisdom when it is needed. Grant us the ability to act with courage and with grace. Allow us to listen deeply. Enable us to rest when necessary. Allow us to extend compassion to ourselves when we may fall short. Lift our spirits today and connect us with the sources of strength and care we need when we find ourselves in the low places of life. Connected in love with this community, with others, and with all living things, may we seek to live each day fully in service of the whole, in the wonder, in the blessing of this life, in this day, this moment. Amen.
Before beginning my sermon, I want to offer you this extended reading by Toronto author Dionne Brand from her novel, What We All Long For. Mornings are like that on the subway trains, everyone having left their sovereign houses and apartments and rooms to enter the crossroads of the city. They first try at not letting the city touch them, holding on to the meager privacy of a city with 3 million people. But eventually, they are disrupted. Anonymity is the big lie of a city. You aren't anonymous at all. You're common, really. Common like so many pebbles, so many specks of dirt, so many atoms of materiality. What floats in the air on a subway train is chance. People stand or sit with the thin magnetic film of their life wrapped around them. They think they're safe, but they know they're not. Any minute you can crash into someone else's life. And if you are lucky, it's good, like walking on light. There are Italian neighborhoods and Vietnamese neighborhoods in this city. There are Chinese ones and Ukrainian ones and Pakistani ones and Korean ones and Ethiopian ones. Name a region on the planet, and there is someone from there here. All of them sit on Ojibwe land, but hardly any of them know it or care because that genealogy is willfully untraceable except in the name of the city itself. In this city, there are Bulgarian mechanics, Colombian cafe owners, Latvian book publishers, Welsh roofers, Afghani dancers, Iranian mathematicians, Tamil cooks in Thai restaurants, Calabrese boys with Jamaican accents, Filipina Saudi beauticians, Russian doctors changing tires. There are Romanian bill collectors, Cape Croker fishmongers, Japanese grocery clerks, French gas meter readers, German bakers, Haitian and Bengali taxi drivers with Irish dispatchers. Lives in the city are doubled, tripled, conjugated. People all trying to handle their own chain of events, trying to keep the story straight in their own heads. In this city, like everywhere, people work, they eat, they drink, they have sex, but it's hard not to wake up here without the certainty of misapprehension. I love that passage, and I'm especially grateful to Catherine Lake, who introduced it to me so many years ago. Though written in the late 90s, it still captures something of the unique nature of this great city, this grand experiment in the mixing and mingling of peoples from most every corner on this good green earth. This place where cultures collide in ways large and small. Collisions that, when at our best, make us richer for the encounter and leave us changed, expanding our sense of being connected to something larger, to something beyond ourselves. helping us to understand that the world we know is much more complex and beautiful than we ever dared to imagine. There is a certain humility required to take in such lessons when they are offered, to appreciate that there are wonderfully different ways of doing most everything. There is a certain humility required for living in a city like this at this moment in time. And that is no less true for us as a congregation than it is for us as individuals. Those of you who have served in leadership in the congregation probably recognized this reading. I've shared it with some frequency across the years on retreats of the board and conveners and staff. More than once, I've done so as several of us gathered on a Saturday up on the 32nd floor of the Manulife Center with its breathtaking view of downtown. At those retreats, which were often focused on the quest for a new building, I asked the leaders to all gather at the windows and to look out, a visual meditation on the teeming life of Toronto. And then I shared Dionne Brand's words, her haunting tribute to this beautiful, complicated city that is, as always, coming into its own. And yet, as much as I treasure this reading, I'm always caught off guard by that unsettling last line, the one about waking up in Toronto with a certain misapprehension. I looked up the word misapprehension just to make sure that I fully apprehended it. It means a mistaken belief or a mistaken interpretation of something. But what on earth does Brand mean by saying it's hard not to wake up in Toronto without the certainty of misunderstanding? Are we, one of the most diverse cities the world has ever known, a metropolis of misapprehension? Hold that thought. A few years ago, I came across a challenging article that drew on the research of Robert Putnam, a much-loved Harvard professor known for his progressive political views, who a few years earlier had written an influential book called Bowling Alone. In that book, he decried the breakdown of social capital, noting how people in recent decades are living in ever smaller social circles with less connectivity and commitment to the community around them. As his title suggests, people these days are bowling alone. More often than not, the time we once spent with others, we now spend by ourselves or with a shrinking circle of people. And this was long before the pandemic sent us all to our individual rooms. His book called for people to come out of their bunkers and to reweave the fabric of community. But more recently, what Putnam has found, to his own great discomfort, is that there is more diversity. When there is more diversity in a place, there is lower social capital. He said, in more diverse communities, people tend to distrust their neighbors, regardless of the color of their skin, to withdraw even from close friends, to expect the worst from their community and its leaders, to volunteer less, give less to charity, to work on community projects less often, to vote less, to agitate for social reform more, but to have less faith that they can actually make a difference. To put a finer point on it, he said, people living in ethnically diverse settings appear to hunker down, that is, to pull in like a turtle. Putnam spent years between announcing his findings and publishing his paper. How, he wondered, could this be? He tested the data over and over again, playing with every variable, but the results stayed the same. He looked at contact theory and conflict theory, the two leading schools of thought on ethnic and racial diversity, and concluded that more contact amongst people of differing backgrounds didn't necessarily lead to stronger bonds, but it fortunately didn't result in heightened tensions either. What he found instead was that it just caused a general civic malaise. One of his most surprising findings was that in more diverse settings, levels of trust were not only lower between groups, but even among people of the same group. Diversity, he said, seems to bring out the turtle in all of us. Now, hold that thought too. Another study has suggested that the reason behind all of this might be oxytocin, as in the hormone that plays a central role in our brain's experience of intimacy. It's the magic ingredient that helps couples to bond and what prompts mother mammals to nurse their young after giving birth. It's also what helps humans to trust each other. A Dutch researcher has found it is also what causes us to trust those who are most like us and to hold a bias against those who are different. It is the hormone of the clan and the key agent of ethnocentrism. Now, a few minutes ago, I asked you to hold the thought about the certainty of misapprehension. I invite you now to link up that thought with this finding about oxytocin and the human tendency to distrust those who are different from us. And then when you've put those ideas together, to bring in Putnam's research about how diversity brings about less social capital, less social connection, less social cohesion. With all of this now top of mind, I find myself wondering about what seems to be the pressing question before us, of whether we who live in this great city are really just a bunch of hormonal turtles incapable of understanding one another. The social science would seem to suggest that it is so. It makes the case that difference should drive us into lonely caves of distrust. But I, for one, believe with all of my being that such data need not be our destiny. While we humans may have evolved with hormones to help us sort out between family and friend and foe, we are more than capable of overcoming the fears that would keep us apart. We can choose a more courageous and generous path, even if it is at times the more difficult one. I do believe, as our motto states, that diversity is the strength of this city. But I believe it will also be our undoing if we fail to keep at the hard work of building a truly just and equitable society. The misapprehension any of us may feel is not helped by romanticizing our diversity, by not truly confronting and contending with the challenges that come with living in a multicultural society in which injustices of so many kinds continue to persist. To state it more frankly, we cannot celebrate our diversity without seeking to overcome the hard realities of racism, the scourge of inequality, and the bitter legacies of colonialism that in such insidious ways have also had a hand in shaping our city into being what it is today. We all know this, of course, on some level. And there are many of us who see this as the core of our work in the world, especially as Unitarians. It's central, I believe, to the work of our congregation, which I think of as a little loving laboratory of the human spirit, a place where we are called to do the deep soul work required to help us build genuine community by working through that which would separate us, by building bridges of trust and understanding. But again, we should be under no illusion that this is easy. As the explorer Freya Stark put it, few are the giants of the soul who actually feel that the human race is their family circle. Mindful of the research I shared a moment ago, we may now better understand why. It takes a determined commitment to draw wide the circle of human kinship and to see across the barriers of difference the very same sacred human essence looking back at us from another's eyes. It takes a leap of faith to move beyond what oxytocin alone would tell us, to know in the deepest parts of our being that we are indeed one with all. And it takes a sustained determination to face all of this, knowing that there are deep systemic issues that must be addressed once and for all if we are to make the most of the grand experiment that is our city, and if we are to make the most of this great experiment that is our congregation. I believe all of this is about growing our hearts and growing our souls, learning to behold one another with a sacred curiosity, to resist the temptation to assume we know someone else, and instead endeavor to understand the variety of human experience and to ask how and why someone might hold a different perspective on matters of justice or theology or politics or any of the deep moral questions of our time. Such growth is about emerging from our lovely, lonely turtle shells to bask in the wonder of the world around us. A world made ever more whole when we dare against the odds and maybe even our hormones to place our trust and our faith in each other. In just over an hour, we will gather in a congregational meeting to make a critically important decision that will shape the future of First Unitarian in untold ways. While I emphatically believe this to be the congregation's decision, I feel you deserve to know where I stand. I believe the move to Oakwood Village will open up incredibly exciting possibilities for our congregation to more deeply engage with the city in ways that have been difficult in our present context at Avenue and St. Clair. And I believe this move will ask us to grow in ways we can scarcely imagine, and I can only see that as a good thing. What we can be certain of is that all of this experience will demand that we grow in integrity, to be true to the principles that we profess, even when it means we must stretch and change to make real our commitments to love and to justice. Though I am by no stretch of the imagination a gardener, I have learned a few things across the years. One of these is that replanting something as simple as a shrub can bring about a full-on crisis of faith. If you've ever done some replanting yourself, you'll know that what you often find when you pull a plant from its container is that the roots have become coiled in tight knots. For the plant to survive the transition requires cutting away at the roots for them to be freed to extend out and into the life-giving soil of their new setting. Even knowing that, it is a huge act of faith to trust that growth can and will come from such seeming pain, even though that is how it seems life so often works. To practice that kind of trust is one of the hardest things life asks of us, whether the question comes to us in our individual lives or whether it comes to us at a point of decision as a congregation. We have sold our building bravely and boldly, and we are now in need of a new place to call home. We are in the process of pulling up our roots, and we are in the stage of loosening out of necessity the knotted parts of congregational life that no longer serve us. It's not fun, it's not painless, it's involved a ton of work, and there's more to come. And all of it is nothing less than a leap of faith, an act of trust on all of our parts. But whenever a gardener replants a living thing, it is with the sacred hope that the plant will not merely survive, but truly thrive in its new setting. As we prepare to make this move, may we, gardeners that we have now all become, undertake this work with care and humility, with love and commitment, with hope and with joy. May we give ourselves fully to this act of faith, trusting that First Unitarian can still learn new things and come to serve our city in relevant and life-giving ways now and for generations still to come. May it be so. Blessed be.
I invite you to join in singing our closing hymn. Thank you to resident musician Danny Fong for preparing this for us. Let us sing together. Let this be a house of peace.
Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be our house, a haven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Let this be a house of Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of freedom, guardian of dignity and worth held deep inside us. Let this be our house, a platform for the free voice, where all our sacred differences here shall not divide us. Let this be a house of Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let all in this house seek truth, where scientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, a house of our creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate our atmosphere. Let this be a house of Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May vision for our children be our common theme. Let this be our house of myth and lore and legend, our trove of ancient story and cradle of our tender dreams. Let this be a house house of let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of let this be our house of peace.
Closing words come from Reverend Meg Barnhouse. Brick by brick, story by story, we build a congregation, seeing the patterns, the symmetry, the plain joy of setting one story on the other, sustained by the strong and beautiful structures they make. We will never be finished in this great work, and that, my friends, is okay. Go in peace.
Thank you so very much, Sean, and thank you all for your presence here today. If you are new to the First Unitarian Congregation, we warmly invite you to the Newcomer Room hosted by Dallas Bergen and Diane Wagner immediately after the service today. You will find the link for that in the chat. YouTube, we are just noting about the technical issues around YouTube today. There is a Zoom link for voting members who are planning to join the meeting. Registration begins at noon and then the meeting begins at 12:30. There is the YouTube link, and yet, as has been noted, sadly we are having technical difficulties with our YouTube link today. Let's see. What else shall I say? A reminder to those of you who have not yet extinguished your chalice, please do so. And we encourage you to take whatever time you need for lunch and to stretch before the significant congregational meeting. Thank you all for being here today. Go in peace and blessings.